Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller Grotner Plummer Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Maller Grotner Plummer Attorneys, understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis, on the web at lawngp.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson, attorneys at law since 1949, utilizing experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.
Coming up on Indiana Newsdesk.
When the person has been in this country with a good faith in order to pursue his American dream, where his visa has been denied, of course it's going to have a fear mounting on me too.
Universities are warning international students not to go back home for the summer, given wavering immigration policies. Reporter Aubrey Wright and I spoke with some international students at IU about their plans for the summer.
Hoosiers are cleaning up after last Friday's tornadoes that cut across Monroe and Brown counties, damaging more than 80 homes and businesses.
We'll probably be working on it every day all summer, and I won't be surprised if there's work going on in the fall.
A Duggar woman was killed during a tornado touchdown near Linton. And after a 15-year moratorium, Indiana executed its second death row inmate since December. We'll have these stories and more right now on Indiana Newsdesk. Welcome to Indiana Newsdesk. I'm Joe Wren. Universities across the country are warning international students not to travel home for the summer, given President Trump's ever-changing immigration policies. Isabella Vesperini joins us from the sample gates to explain how IU students are navigating these changes.
International students are facing an increasingly uncertain future. Reporter Aubrey Wright and I spoke with some of those students at IU about how the current political climate impacts their plans for the summer. It's the end of the spring semester and Indiana University's campus is clearing out. Students are popping champagne, saying goodbye to Bloomington, and packing up. While domestic students celebrate, many international students face a difficult decision: stay in the U.S. or go back home, and upon return to America, risk dealing with tighter border restrictions. This spring, IU students and thousands around the country feared they lost their visas. But weeks later, those visas were restored. It complicated an already tense process.
If your visa expires, you can stay within the U.S., but you cannot travel back and forth internationally.
Vietnamese graduate student Quan Lê Tien feels more hesitant to travel back home because of the uncertainty.
And that has been a problem because, I plan to travel for conferences as well as visiting my family. And, just the idea that I have to apply for the visa, and then the process of visa application, they will look through your social media, all these things.
Lê Tien is staying in Bloomington for a research position, but if he were to go back, he said he would take many more precautions. He says he should apply early for his visa and get his documents in order, and he should be more mindful of his phone.
I know people actually delete their entire phone content because, there are all these stories about the border security, actually check out your phone, ask to access your phone.
The Indiana Graduate Workers Union and other community activists have stepped up to protect international students. Lawyers are giving advice to union members, including Lê Tien. Meanwhile, he feels as if IU has not provided enough support for international students.
The IU administration is completely silent about this.
Bhumireddy Sai Srinivas first came to the U.S. from India last August. He was hopeful when President Donald Trump got elected, thinking there would be more job opportunities for international students. But like Lê Tien, he also got worried when he instead saw how many visas were terminated.
It was too devastating for the international students like us, and it has been fear-moring us.
He isn't too worried about getting deported because he is here legally.
As a law student, I'm sure he's not targeting any the students who is legal immigrants coming to the US. That's only who is doing some wrongful activity or criminal kind of activity.
But he hasn't gone back home to visit his family in India. He wanted to focus on his studies, but also had concerns about not being able to come back into the U.S.
So I was a bit scared after seeing a lot of social media posts where the person's visa has been denied or where they have been returned to their home country so during the port of entry. I don't know if it's real or not.
Sai will be staying in the U.S. working in Virginia at an immigration firm as a legal assistant. If given the option to return to India right now, he said he wouldn't go.
I'm waiting for a very good time.
Those are just a few examples of the complications facing international students. For most universities, it's worth the hassle. IU Emeritus Dean of Education Gerardo Gonzalez says top universities want to attract international students for their tuition dollars and their perspectives.
They add to the intellectual diversity. They add to the dialogue, the discussions that happen in the classrooms and in social settings. And at the end of the day, increases the understanding of students about the world and themselves.
Gonzalez says federal changes are eroding the idea that prospective students will be safe and welcomed. At least 10 of Sai's friends have left the country out of fear of being deported.
When the person has been in this country with a good faith in order to pursue his American dream, where his visa has been denied, of course it's going to have a fear mounting on me too. So, but we can't do anything.
While these two international students decided to stay in the U.S., others may risk going back home. Reporting from the sample gates for Indiana Newsdesk with reporter Aubrey Wright, I'm Isabella Vesperini.
Monroe County residents are cleaning up after last Friday's devastating storm that spawned a number of tornadoes throughout the Midwest. One EF2 tornado was on the ground for 35 miles, stretching from the west side of Bloomington to Brown County State Park. Pat Bean has this report.
Claire Schaefer wasn't home when the tornado hit her property near Clear Creek on the south side of Bloomington last Friday evening, but her 96-year-old father was. He lives in an apartment building on the property.
One of the calls we got said that Dad had fallen and that there was lots of severe damage at our property and that we needed to come home right away.
The tornado destroyed her 2 barns, ripped the front porch off her house, and shattered windows. It also damaged her father's apartment.
He had a terrible eye injury above his eye and some abrasions on his hands that are bothering him quite a bit, but he's recuperating well.
While there were no fatalities in Monroe County, a Duggar woman, Allison McCammon, was killed and 3 of her children injured when a tree fell on their car after a tornado touched down near Linton. Her 9-year-old son, Tegan, remains sedated in the hospital with head injuries. He's facing multiple surgeries. A family friend has set up a GoFundMe account that has raised more than $26,000 for the family. It was the second tornado in the Bloomington area this year, and one climate expert says tornadoes could become more routine here.
Influence of climate change maybe wouldn't be in the severity of a given tornado or set of tornadoes, but rather in the frequency that tornadoes form in Bloomington.
He says the terrain around Bloomington is usually a deterrent to tornadoes.
This is tornado season. It's just Indiana doesn't necessarily see a lot of these, and particularly in Bloomington or kind of the hilly areas of southern Indiana, they're not particularly common, although they're not, they do occur.
The Monroe County Emergency Management Agency says the tornado damaged a total of 84 homes in the county. Much of that was in the Clear Creek neighborhood. The rest were on the west side of Bloomington, where the tornado touched down along State Road 45. Along with nearly 10 houses damaged, the People and Animal Learning Services barns were destroyed. One horse, Banks, had a minor injury.
Most of our horses were outside. We had 4 in stalls, but actually safer for the horses when there's the possibility of structure damage for them to be in pasture. And so those who could be were turned into pasture that night. And thankfully, all of our people are safe and all of our horses are safe.
One horse and 2 dogs were killed when the tornado that cut through Monroe County also struck Horseman's Campground in Brown County State Park. The campground remains closed, but the rest of the park is open. Schaefer says she doesn't know how much it will cost to repair her property or how long it will take to clean up all the trees that fell around her house.
Except for our summer vacation that we already have planned, we'll probably be working on it every day all summer. And I won't be surprised if there's work going on in the fall, whether it's rebuilding some things or cleaning up.
With WTIU team coverage for Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Pat Bean.
Monroe County has placed dumpsters at 3 sites for residents to take debris from the tornado to over the next 2 weeks. They're at Elrin and Harmony Road, at Jackson Creek Drive and Sandpiper Drive, and at Lighthouse Christian Academy. Residents can also take storm-damaged trees and vegetation debris to the Monroe County Emergency Management Site on North Fish Road. Now we're joined by Aubrey Wright for more headlines from around the state. Hi, Aubrey.
Hey, Joe. Monroe County Schools has eliminated 61 positions because of financial shortfalls the corporation is facing. Most of those terminated were in custodial, food, and health services. Superintendent Markay Winston blames state caps on referendum funds, property tax cuts, declining student enrollment, and increasing payroll expenses.
Our enrollment declined by over 800 students, 833 to be exact, since COVID, which resulted in a cumulative loss of revenue to the education fund of approximately $22.4 million, inclusive of this current school year.
By August, the district will have about 200 vacancies because of retirements and resignations. Winston says MCCSC doesn't expect to fill many of those positions. A probationary deputy in the Monroe County Sheriff's Office has been fired following a report of suspected abuse of his infant child. The Sheriff's Office was called to IU Hospital Monday about an injured infant undergoing treatment. Officers determined probationary deputy Noel Hernandez Jr. was the father. The case was handed to the Indiana State Police, who arrested Hernandez Wednesday on multiple accounts of neglect and battery. Hernandez had only been with the department since March 31st.
It was very difficult for us, and particularly as a father, it was something that all of us give a lot of thought on moving forward.
Marte said Hernandez passed the department's background checks, which includes a psychological evaluation and polygraph, before being hired. There are 12 exceptions to the new work reporting requirements for the Healthy Indiana Plan, or HIP, but federal lawmakers are proposing their own version of the policy for Medicaid expansion programs. As Indiana Public Broadcasting's Abigail Ruman reports, Medicaid experts say under that proposal, Indiana would no longer be allowed to provide several of those exceptions.
The federal policy includes some exceptions that overlap with Indiana's law, but may not go as far. Some exceptions weren't included at all in the federal proposal. Leo Cuello is a research professor at Georgetown University's Center for Children and Families. He says it also requires states to implement the policy in 2029, no sooner and no later.
So we're no longer in the world of states getting to decide how they want to run their own programs, right? This becomes more of a top-down environment.
Cuello says the specific policy details and regulations won't be available to states until July 2027. States won't be able to deviate from those regulations, which Cuello says is because lawmakers need people to lose coverage in order to generate savings.
It would not make sense to invest a whole lot of money to build a system which you know is no longer going to be matching the federal requirements that are about to come online.
For Indiana Public Broadcasting, I'm Abigail Ruman.
Cuello says the federal proposal includes a number of changes to Medicaid and broader healthcare policy that threaten people's coverage, which he says will lead to more medical debt and worse health outcomes. The proposal to adopt vote centers in Monroe County died this week when it failed to get unanimous approval from the county election board. The plan would have abandoned location-based precinct voting in favor of 29 vote centers to open to any resident. But Republican board member Danny Shields voted against the plan, calling into question the underlying goal of getting the county to adopt vote centers.
It is important to note that the committee was never entirely unbiased. They never considered whether vote centers are a good idea. They were always focused on getting them implemented.
65 of Indiana's 92 counties currently use the vote center model. The roundabout at the intersection of Winslow Road, Rogers Road, and High Street will be closed for 45 days starting Tuesday. The intersection is being upgraded to meet modern design standards with new features like a truck apron and a wider median island. The project will also resurface roads and upgrade sidewalks and crosswalks. Rogers Family Park in the area will remain open, although the parking lot will be closed. And Bloomington's historic Starlight Drive-In is up for sale. Will Langman bought the 70-year-old outdoor theater 2 years ago and has since renovated it, but he says it's time to move on. The Starlight Drive-In will continue to screen movies until it's sold.
I put every penny that's made here back into the theater. I have not taken anything home. In fact, I put more than we've made here into it.
And Joe Will says he's selling the Starlight to purchase another drive-in closer to his home in Terre Haute.
Have you been there?
I haven't.
Oh, it's so cool. You got to go this summer. It's a great time. Thanks, Aubrey. Coming up next on Indiana Newsdesk. Death penalty advocates and protesters gathered outside the state prison in Michigan City Monday as the state put a man to death. And Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith faced plenty of opposition during a town hall this week in Ellettsville. These stories and more right here on Indiana Newsdesk.
Asking tough questions to those in power.
Russia right now has you outmanned, outgunned. Is it time to think about a settlement?
As a newcomer to Congress, what did you make of the high degree of dysfunction within the Republican conference?
I always felt that it was broken.
And covering events as they unfold.
Opposition fighters have reached the suburbs of the capital, Damascus.
Recently, WFIU and WTIU lost a combined $450,000 in state funding. This loss will directly impact the programming you rely on every day. The mission of public media has never been more vital or more vulnerable than right now. We're deeply committed to providing trusted programming to this region, and we're relying on our community now as much as ever. Help us meet this moment by becoming a sustaining member or increasing your monthly gift at WTIU.org/donate. Thank you.
Welcome back to Indiana Newsdesk. Indiana Lieutenant Governor Micah Beckwith is no stranger to public scrutiny over his controversial remarks. At a town hall in Ellettsville Monday night, Beckwith went face-to-face with some of his most dissatisfied constituents. Ethan Sandweiss attended the event and has this report.
An hour before the meeting, opponents were there in force. Clergy, activists, and elected officials arranged a protest against Beckwith's controversial defense of the 3/5 compromise.
So let us ask, what kind of consciousness is being revealed when a leader defends the dehumanization of others as a historical win for equity?
Contradicting mainstream historians, Beckwith asserted that the 1787 agreement to count enslaved black people as 3/5 of a person when determining the number of seats in Congress was intended to limit the power of slaveholding states. The president of the Monroe County NAACP doesn't buy Beckwith's explanation.
I think Beckwith has shown his true character. What do you think? Now, just as importantly, and I wonder, and I'm sure you do too, is why hasn't Governor Braun denounced his lieutenant governor's attempt to distort this historical narrative?
But inside the Ellettsville town hall, the lieutenant governor seemed at home, answering questions from often hostile constituents.
The left likes to push that systemic racism still exists, right? Show me in our system where a black person can't do what a white person can do. Show me, where?
Despite hard questions and occasional jeers and insults from the crowd, the lieutenant governor maintained his calm and responded to each audience member.
I like it when people throw the tough questions at me. I get really tired of being in an echo chamber. I'm going to tell you right now, you guys are not that. And so thank you.
Beckwith's comments on the 3/5 compromise have earned him a rebuke from the governor, but he stands by his interpretation of history. For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Ethan Sandweiss.
Indiana executed Benjamin Ritchie in the early hours Tuesday morning. He was the second inmate put to death since December when the state resumed executions after a 15-year moratorium. George Hale was outside the state penitentiary in Michigan City when the execution took place and has this report.
Current and former police officers arrived at the Indiana State Prison about an hour before midnight. Some came from Beech Grove, where police officer Bill Toney was working in 2000 when Benjamin Ritchie shot and killed him during a pursuit. 25 years later, the officers waited quietly, some holding blue glow sticks in the darkness as the clock ticked toward midnight, the execution date set by Indiana's Supreme Court after a split decision on Ritchie's appeals. They kept their distance from media and death penalty opponents, holding vigil in the same lot.
They've been pretty mellow over there, not bothering us.
Anti-death penalty campaigner Abe Bonowitz's group was far outnumbered by the officers. He said executing Ritchie wasn't likely to make their jobs any safer.
Law enforcement officers are at greater risk of being killed in the line of duty in states that have the death penalty, and even more so in states that use it. That's just one more example of the disparity in how the death penalty is being applied and why I believe it's unfair.
It also reflects a trend in the U.S. towards skepticism of the death penalty, and that's reflected in fewer death sentences imposed by juries. Ritchie, for example, is among more than 2 people in Indiana convicted of killing a police officer, but the only one on death row. Josh Payne believes they should all be executed and faster.
They're out here protesting the death penalty. They committed a crime. If they can't do the time, they shouldn't do it.
Payne hosted a late-night barbecue at his home facing the prison and the anti-death penalty protesters. He blasted music for hours.
Protest the protesters, protesting the death penalty, letting them know what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
Ritchie's execution started sometime after midnight. Media access to executions is virtually non-existent in Indiana, unlike all other states that regularly use the death penalty. Journalists aren't allowed to view any of the process. Attorney Steve Schutte was with Ritchie during the execution and shared what he could recall moments after his client died.
He was lying down. His left arm was, fist was clenching, and his feet were moving for about 10 seconds. Then he sat up and violently twitched for about 3 seconds, lay back down, and then about 3 minutes later, 2 or 3 minutes later, they closed the blinds. I don't know what any of that means. I'm not a doctor.
The Indiana Department of Corrections put Ritchie's time of death at 12:46 a.m. The Indiana Supreme Court issued an unusual divided ruling that offered Ritchie no relief, although the Chief Justice sided with Ritchie.
This is a foolish, senseless, agonizing waste of time and money. The man we executed today, though he himself acknowledges that he committed a senseless crime 25 years ago, is not the same person who committed that crime. He was a different man. That's all I have. Thanks, guys.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm George Hale.
There's now 6 men remaining on Indiana's death row, but none have execution dates scheduled. Racing fans are gearing up for the Indianapolis 500 Sunday as thousands pour into the speedway. It's another day of work for the doctor on duty. Aubrey Wright has the story on the physicians working behind the scenes at the greatest spectacle in racing.
33 drivers are bolting down the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, pushing past 200 miles an hour. It's a familiar sight for Dr. Liz Sullivan.
I grew up a racing fan my entire life. I didn't really know that doing medicine and motorsports was like a possibility at all.
Sullivan is a motorsports medicine fellow. She's part of a one-of-a-kind program with IndyCar and the Indiana University School of Medicine. It trains doctors for emergencies during high-speed races.
This program allows me to work with some of the best people in the industry that have the experience of, witnessing and resuscitating and responding to crashes, also to manage the drivers as they go on with the safety aspects.
Sullivan says she's also worked in Formula One, NASCAR, and drag racing. And she's often on the road with IndyCar's medical team, prepared to treat everyone from drivers to fans.
It's the only place that I get to dedicate an entire year just to learn from all these amazing individuals in racing, and it kind of is a choose your own adventure.
Sullivan's adventure is possible thanks to program director Julia Visor. Visor was the inaugural Motorsports Fellow.
One of the things I always talk about is being loud about your passions and seeking out allies where you expect them and where you don't expect them.
Sullivan will graduate this summer, sticking with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and serving as Chief Medical Officer for rally races in Tennessee and Canada.
We already have a lineup for class of 26 and lined up somebody for class of 2027.
For Indiana Newsdesk, I'm Aubrey Wright.
The IU School of Medicine accepts just one motorsports medicine fellow each year. Now you can watch the 109th running of the Indianapolis 500 live Sunday on Fox. National coverage of the race begins at 10 a.m. with the green flag scheduled to drop at 12:45 p.m. Fox will also re-air the race at 7 p.m. Sunday. Well, that's the end of this program, but our work continues online as we cover the news throughout the week at WTIUnews.org. Have a great weekend.
Indiana Newsdesk is made possible in part by Maller Grotner Plummer Attorneys, providing legal services to clients and the community. Maller Grotner Plummer Attorneys, understanding, expertise, results. Bloomington and Indianapolis. On the web at lawngp.com. IU Center for Rural Engagement, extending IU Bloomington resources to improve Hoosier lives in partnership with communities and organizations. rural.indiana.edu. Smithville, fiber internet, security solutions, and voice in Southern Indiana. More information at smithville.com. Bunger and Robertson, attorneys at law since 1949, utilizing experience, knowledge, and resources to help individuals and families recover in personal injury matters. Information at lawbr.com. And by WTIU members. Thank you.